You're listening to a Nowhere Bros podcast, a not-so-serious look at the happenings in music. Wu-Tang. Greetings, human beings.
Hello,
My name is Sam,
I'm Karl.
and we are the Nowhere Bros,
That's right.
and you're listening to a podcast extravaganza like you've never listened to before.
The debut.
Yes, what we're doing is we're going to hopefully have a monthly podcast series where we bring you our words of wisdom around music and issues in music and whatever's going on.
The happenings.
The happenings, yes. So this is a world premiere, a first. And our first episode today is going to be kind of like a review of 2015, looking back on what has been a fantastic year for music.
Incredible year.
One of the best years in living memory. I can't think of any years that have been better, actually, in recent times. And also, we're going to kind of preview 2016, what might happen in 2016. We're going to look into our crystal ball, gaze away from what we know so far. Of course, a lot of stuff we don't know. But what we do know, we're going to try and make sense of. So we're going to get started. And I thought we would start today by kind of looking at some of the things that have happened in 2015, some of the issues. And I thought we'd start by looking at Kendrick Lamar, who's had a fantastic year and has kind of made all the headlines with his album To Pimp a Butterfly. So, Karl, what do you make of Kendrick Lamar's success this year?
Okay, so to start with, I thought we would set the context a little bit here. So, 2012, Kendrick releases Good Kid, Mad City in November. And that album was so universally adored by the hip-hop community. Then he spends the next year touring. Then 2014 he starts to record this new album. And then I think it was in September he drops the I single. And this was a completely new sound for Kendrick. I mean, you've got this sort of upbeat, positive message, self-worth. It's got this Isley Brothers sample. He hadn't really made anything like this. And it was sort of like an old school sound. Then I think it was in February this year he dropped The Black of the Berry. And that was the one that really kind of set everyone back. It was like he's suddenly using this incredibly walloping kind of boom bap beat. The lyrics are this sort of societal, racial commentary, and that was when people started to think, okay, this is going to be a game changer. And then it came out in March, and it was a game changer.
It's just gone wild, really. It's appeared on everyone's kind of best of lists and number one on a lot of lists, and yeah, quite amazing, really.
You've heard the album. What did you make of it?
I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was quite dark in places, quite something else, really. Like, there was a lot going on musically and lyrically, and the fact that he brought in a lot of these other people to play on it as well, which is quite interesting. Yeah, I thought it was amazing. Kind of had a kind of a funky Prince-type vibe in places, and some jazz, definitely some jazz, and I think it's rubbed off on a lot of other artists as well. I mean, already we're hearing David Bowie's been influenced with his new album coming up.
Yeah, it's really, I felt like it was a celebration of those kind of African-American musical forms. So you've got the jazz, you've got like a spoken word track in there, you've got the funk, you've got the rhythm and blues, and then of course you've got the core theme is hip-hop.
Yeah.
And I felt like, even though it was quite aesthetically different to his previous album, I think the sequencing follows that same sort of successful formula. So you've got those really hard-hitting party songs like All Right and King Kunta, but then you've got these incredibly ambitious, introspective pieces like Complexion and How Much a Dollar Costs and that sort of thing.
And I think it's made a kind of a bit of a wave with both black and white audiences, and also a lot of non-hip-hop people, I think, have kind of enjoyed it as well.
It's quite an accessible album, I think, in some ways. Some parts of the album haven't really clicked with me yet, but for the most part, yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, some parts are a bit kind of up out there for me, but on the whole, I definitely something pretty spectacular.
Yeah, so big news is that Kendrick's got 11 Grammy nominations. So do you think he's going to walk away with many of these or any of these?
Oh, he'll definitely win something, surely.
Yeah.
Like at least the hip-hop album of the year, or...
Well, last time I thought that was going to happen, but it didn't happen.
Well, what are his competition?
For hip-hop album of the year, Drake, get Drake's mixtape. If you're reading this, it's too late. I think that's only his major competition would probably be Drake. I can't see anyone else really, because Drake was the really he had a huge year as well, because he was the more commercially popular alternative. But Kendrick should win it, but doesn't mean that he will.
Yeah. Grammys can often throw a lot of surprises. All right, moving on. Another major deal this year was the return of Adele.
Hello,
it's me again. She came back out of the blue and released that track Hello, which has become a bit of a meme. The internet went crazy.
It caught on, yeah.
And I think I heard her interview that she was very surprised by the success that it had. Because I was intrigued by how Adele would be received after being inactive for so long, and the risk with that is when you're inactive, other people come along and take up your crown, so to speak. But she's just come back and it's like a blitzkrieg of album sales and internet craziness. I'm kind of surprised that she's been this popular again so quickly.
It's pretty remarkable that she can have a hiatus for so long and then just come back and just have this incredible dominance. And
like the album's broken weekly sales records and everything, and for an industry which doesn't really sell records anymore, that's quite a big deal when you're selling 2 million albums in a couple of weeks or something ridiculous.
And by now she's become so established, her name is the brand in itself. So she didn't need any promotion or anything. Just this announcement, a new song is coming, here's a little preview, and then the YouTube video drops, and that's it. It just blows up. That's all I needed to do, just sit back
I can't think of many other artists who can have that immediate impact and can sell that many records anymore.
No.
It's quite a phenomenon, really. So she came back, and by all accounts, she's going to be playing some concerts next year, and no doubt the album will continue to sell massives of copies. It won't probably sell as many as her last album did, which sold in excess of about 20 million. I don't think anyone can sell that many albums anymore.
No.
But
But it's still not on Spotify, is it?
No, we're going to come to that.
Okay.
Just hold your horses. Musically speaking, 2015 was a great year. There was lots of good stuff across multiple genres, lots of great albums. What were some of your favourite albums this year?
Well, I'll probably go with... I really like the Erykah Badu mixtape.
Yeah, definitely.
But You Can't Use My Phone.
Absolutely.
So she just recorded this on the back of Hotline Bling remix, and she said she played it at a party, and people said this is really good, so she decided to make a whole album based on that concept. And she just recorded it in a few weeks, and I think it kind of has this real kind of seamless flow about it. Like, it's a loose concept, but it works. I think
so smooth.
It is smooth. Her voice just kills. She kills it. She absolutely kills it.
Just neo soul at its best.
Yeah, and like some of those tracks have got that real kind of really old school, like 80s electro, like African Bambaataa sort of thing going on. And then just casually, Andre 3000 appears at the end of the album, makes this incredible verse,
says hello,
sings, and then I was like, what? And then that was probably the best feature spot I heard this year, was Andre 3000.
Cool. Anything else?
Well, the other album that I really liked was the Royal Headache album, High. Interesting fact, if it wasn't for our Genre of the Week series I did on Power Pop, I probably would have never listened to this group. And I'm glad I did, because they're a real kind of throwback mix of 70s punk rock, like Sex Pistols. There's a bit of Joan Jett in there, punk rock. There's a bit of the Strokes in there, garage rock. But what really sells this band for me is the lead singer guy, Shogun, who has this really deep, soulful register. So it kind of have this really unique sound. And I think in this album, they had a bit of a progression because the production's a bit better. So the songs are a bit more fleshed out, better quality, and his voice has really come a long way. So he takes center stage in some of the tracks. But it's just, if you just love crazy punk rock with some really nice melodies as well, it's a really great album. I really enjoyed it.
Cool. Some of my favourites, you can read more about this on our blog post, Albums of the Year.
That's true.
But some of my favourites were the obviously Unknown Mortal Orchestra, Multi-Love. That was a fantastic album. And also Blur, New Order, Courtney Barnett, Erykah Badu. I'm just reading off names willy-nilly here. But there's been so much good music that it's hard to kind of box things in and just...
I like the Courtney Barnett album.
Oh, yeah. No, she's a wonderful songwriter. And the fact that she sings in a kind of a semi-Australian accent is pretty impressive.
I thought the album art was quite deceiving. I was expecting some, like, somber, like kind of singer-songwriter, folky acoustic album. But it's just this kind of really raucous folk rock with some really great singing. I think her voice is really unique.
Yep.
And it suits her style.
And she's a pretty good guitar player as well.
Yeah.
What about disappointments for the year? For me, I wasn't that impressed with Adele's comeback album, I have to admit. I was expecting a lot more. When she promised that she was going to make like a country folk album, and I'm very disappointed she didn't go down there.
Country folk?
That's what she said in her hiatus, yeah. But it's a bit sort of, her music to me is overproduced. She's much better live, and she's kind of going on that formulaic somber kind of thing again. And I don't know how many more times can you go down that avenue? I mean, she's got a baby and a husband now, and yeah, I mean, there are some good tracks on there, but on the whole, I was kind of expecting a lot more.
There wasn't really much of a progression, was there?
No. And I was also quite disappointed with the new Saint Germain album, which has been 15 years in the making, because I was really hyped for that, but it was just a lot of sort of loose, unstructured musical ideas more than songs, and yeah, that was a bit of a letdown as well. But other than that, there weren't too many letdowns this year.
Well, for me, the worst thing I heard this year was the Kid Cudi Speed and Bullet to Heaven. This man...
I've seen that listed on a lot of worst of the year lists.
I listened to it out of pure curiosity because I know he's a big figure in hip hop community, Kid Cudi. I don't know what he was doing. It's sort of this Kurt Cobain Nirvana imitation album, but it's lo-fi to the point where you don't really understand what's going on. And then to compound it, there are these Beavis and Butthead sketches at the end of the tracks, and he's rambling into the microphone, he's breathing into the microphone at some points for no reason. And then to make it worse, he's got this second disc, which is full of demos and outtakes. And he's released that as the album. So he's expecting his fans to sit through the whole thing and to kind of accept it. And it's, I don't know what's wrong with him. He needs some help. Cudi needs some help.
Right.
He needs to get back into a good place because he's making whack music. The other thing I didn't really enjoy this year was the Big Grams. I don't know if it's an album or an EP. It's Big Boy from Outkast and Fantagram. And Big Boy, he's fallen off a little bit, I think, recently. And this project was just very safe, a lot of generic electronic beats. Nothing really stood out. And it was EP length. So it's short and it's not substantial either. I think it's time he reunited with Andre because he's starting to concern me a little bit. Come on, Mr. Patton.
Or maybe that's something that'll happen next year.
Hopefully.
Maybe.
Fingers crossed.
We shall see.
Fingers crossed.
All right. I thought we could now go on to talk about some of the major issues that have appeared this year in music. I thought we'd start off with the issue of streaming, which has dominated a lot of musical commentary this year. There's been a lot more new platforms emerge. We had the emergence of Apple Music. Obviously, Spotify is kind of the major streamer, and lots of other platforms. And the issue around artists not putting their music on these streaming platforms because they don't believe they're going to make money off it, or they don't believe that the streaming platform themselves are fair to the artists. What are your thoughts around all this?
So that was mainly Taylor Swift, right? She wrote that letter to Spotify?
Yeah, and Apple, I think, as well.
Yeah.
iTunes, yeah.
So she's kind of objected to that sort of thing. And Adele's album still isn't on Spotify.
No.
Yeah. So I think what we're seeing is Spotify are they're kind of setting the trend a bit because they're starting to dominate music revenue from sales. So we're starting to see other players in the industry try to play catch up a little bit. So they're trying to copy, and mixed results, I guess.
Well, I've heard a lot of bad things about Apple Music. Just how it's just not easy to navigate, and it sort of twists your music library and something. I've heard mixed results around that.
Right.
Yeah.
And YouTube launched a new service this year called YouTube Red, which is subscription based and ad free. I think it's also going to be for music streaming as well.
Well, it's interesting that all these non-music companies are kind of getting into the streaming market, like Apple, YouTube. I think Amazon's trying something.
And we've also got SoundCloud.
Well, SoundCloud and Bandcamp and all those sorts of things are, I think they're better for the sort of lesser known artists or unknown acts to kind of promote their music, and then they can actually kind of maybe get a bit of money off it, because I think Spotify doesn't. Obviously, the smaller artists get bugger all money off Spotify.
I think they pay $1 for every 140 streams or something.
But it's interesting that people like Adele don't want to put their music on there, because they're not going to miss out on money by having their music on there, because they're already making truckloads of money from record sales or touring, that it's not really going to affect them. I think that it affects the smaller artists.
Yeah.
You know, they're not getting any money from streaming, where they could be making not much more, but maybe slightly more money if they had their music in physical sales.
So do you think Adele will eventually put...
Probably,
the
but
album out?
after it's all kind of sold truckloads of money, truckloads of albums, and then, because her other two albums are on there.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because just last week, the Beatles catalogue appeared as a sort of Christmas gift to everyone, because they'd held off streaming since it started, and of course they joined iTunes many years after it had already been in existence. I think that was more to do with the Apple trademark name and an ongoing lawsuit. But it's interesting now that they're now on streaming, whether that's sort of a kind of tick in the box for Spotify and other streaming platforms, that other sort of oldie acts, so to speak, will now follow suit, because there are bands like Prince and King Crimson who don't have their music on streaming services, and whether they'll follow suit because the Holy Grail, the Beatles, have put their music on there. Who knows?
Hopefully.
Or maybe these people just have principles and they're going to stick by them through thick and thin.
Because it all comes down to royalties,
copyright. I think copyright's a big deal as well. Whether because I heard the other day that some singer called David Lowery is suing Spotify for $150 million for copyright infringement, and he represents a group of singers and musicians, and basically he says that they're failing to pay composers and songwriters of tracks on its platform. And I think that's another thing, whether Spotify are paying for the copyright or whether they're just dumping the music on there.
So what do you think will happen to physical sales?
Well, vinyl sales are, interestingly enough, just skyrocketing, really, which is interesting. And cassette tapes seem to be back in vogue as well. But CD sales, I can't... I mean, people will still buy CDs as long as they're available, but I can't see the major labels continuing to release, particularly back catalogues on CDs for much longer, particularly as streaming becomes the kind of preferred method for most people, which it undoubtedly is. And also people are still downloading music free on the internet, and that won't go away.
Yeah, pirating.
Yeah. But it's a very interesting climate for music distribution as things continue to evolve and change, and interesting times.
Yes.
All right, moving on. Another issue that was kind of more closer to home this year was the issue of festivals in Auckland, because we've had 3 festivals cancelled. Soulfest, Echofest, and now I heard the other day Westfest was struggling, and I think it might have been cancelled as well. So what's going on with festivals? Are people just not wanting to go to one-day events anymore? Is it because of the artists, or is it just the promoters themselves? Are they, not dotting their I's and crossing their T's when they set up festivals?
It could be a mixture of things. It could also be we're starting to see these festivals getting a bit more centralised. So maybe people are more interested in going to the bigger festivals of the year, like Rhythm and Vines.
The end of year kind of festivals.
Yeah, Laneway,
Northern Base.
City Limits. It's just been announced.
Yeah.
And these smaller festivals are kind of dropping off a little bit. Maybe it's to do with the promotion. The Soulfest promoters blamed ticket sales at the time, which, that's what they say, but I'm unsure about that.
Yeah, well, I think it is a mixture of things. Like the Echo Festival was initially the McLaren Valley Festival, and apparently they didn't get resource consent to use the venue down in Tauranga, or wherever it was going to be held, and they had to go to Auckland, and then they picked the worst possible venue to hold a 2-day music festival, Vector Arena. The lineup was outstanding, so you can't blame the lineup. I just don't think people wanted to go. It was a last-minute change, and the festival was supposed to be held the second week of 2016, and I just think the timing was probably all wrong, and people aren't going to want to sit inside for 2 days in a venue with terrible sound quality. So I think that didn't help the situation there. Yeah. But then it turns out also that a lot of people who've already bought tickets for that aren't going to get their money back. So maybe something goes deeper in the organisers around that festival.
Maybe it's also for economic reasons. Maybe people just can't afford
Well,
these tickets.
$150, $200. I mean, ticket prices for just one-off gigs are already, reaching extraordinary levels, really. So it'll be interesting to see what the Auckland City Limits second lineup announcement, which is coming up, who will be on that. Whether they've got some really big coups. Because at the moment, apart from Kendrick Lamar, I'm not sure there's much there to entice me to go along.
Yeah, I think it's Kendrick Lamar, Action Bronson, The National. Those are the big three, I think.
Yeah.
And then...
The Phoenix Foundation, Naked and Famous.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to really have to pull something out of the hat there. But yeah, interesting times for music festivals. I think Ragamuffin have had a big coup getting Wu-Tang.
Wu-Tang!
That is a massive coup for that festival. And they've already got some pretty other decent artists on that bill as well. So good on them. So hopefully people will get along to Ragamuffin.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Seeing Wu-Tang live.
Yeah. All right. The last issue I thought we'd talk about today in our kind of review of 2015 was the sort of issue that crops up every year, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Who gets inducted? Who doesn't get inducted? What is going on?
Dear oh dear.
Dear oh dear oh dear. How does Chic get nominated 10 times and not get in? That's probably my biggest... it just pisses me off, man.
I feel sorry for the Smiths as well.
Yeah, but I'm not surprised they didn't get inducted. I think they will get inducted eventually, but there just seems to be a bias against British bands and alternative indie post-punk bands as well. You don't see many of those acts getting in. I mean, The Cure aren't in there, Joy Division. I could go on, really.
Yeah.
And there's no doubt that classic American rock artists get favourable treatment. I mean, we've got Chicago, Steve Miller, and Cheap Trick all getting inducted in the same group, and that just proves it, really.
Do you think we've got NWA being inducted actually, which is pretty big for hip hop? Do you think if we didn't have that Straight Outta Compton movie, they still would have been inducted?
That's a very good question. I'm not entirely sure, because they've been nominated several times before as well. And it's just, how many times do you have to be nominated before you can get inducted into this thing? Because so many people have been nominated, and then they finally get inducted. Deep Purple's another one. They've been inducted, sort of nominated 100 times, and finally they're getting in. Because I just think it's ridiculous. I think if you're nominated one year and don't get in, you should go immediately on the ballot for the next year.
Or you just come in as like a honorary...
Yeah, because they're just selling themselves short by inducting a lot of people who, like straight away, you're seeing bands like the Red Hot Chili Peppers get inducted, or Green Day, like in their first year of eligibility, ahead of other acts who have maybe, I would argue, more influential, getting passed over multiple times, and you're just getting a whole list of people who aren't inducted. And it's just like, what's going on? Who votes for these people? That's what I want to know.
And the male to female ratio is
yeah,
pretty bad
there's
as well.
not many females. Like this year, there's no females on the list, even though Janet Jackson was up for nomination. And also, there are certain genres that just get completely ignored. Prog rock is one, sort of metal, hard rock is another one. As I've said, indie alternative, those sorts of genres, maybe not as popular in the States, kind of get passed over. Because I would have thought, I definitely know for sure that Chic are more influential than Chicago. Sorry, Chicago fans. But apparently, I heard a story floating around that the voter system, the fan voter system was kind of hacked or hijacked, and that's how Chicago got truckloads of votes.
It got hacked.
Apparently, that's the story I heard, because Chicago just absolutely waltzed through in that fan vote thing, and I was like thinking, where the hell are all these Chicago fans? Unless it's just the city of Chicago.
Yes, it was interesting.
Even though that's only worth one vote.
Yeah.
It's not really significant.
But people could vote multiple times. That was the
Yeah.
thing.
But that's what I heard, that there was something, the voting system went all faulty. And
Maybe there was a group of true blue Chicago fans just sitting there every minute voting, just continuously.
maybe, just hiding behind their computer screens.
And they've set up some automatic system.
Well, they've got to sort themselves out, man, because you can't nominate Chic 10 times and they don't get in. They're one of the most influential groups of all time.
Incredibly influential.
I mean, disco, dance music, electronica. Come on.
Nile Rodgers is still around.
Get it together, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Get it together. I'm not happy. But yeah, they'll have their big shindig in April, I think, and it'll be interesting because the thing I like about this is you get at these gigs a lot of band members reuniting who haven't played with their lineup in years, and a lot of them don't get on. I mean, there are members in Deep Purple who don't get on with each other. Cheap Trick,
Yeah, the drummer.
the drummer doesn't get on, and it's always in the past there've been some pretty awkward moments and acceptance speeches. Probably the worst one I saw that was the most awkward was the Blondie induction.
Oh yes, that was
very, very awkward to say the least. Yeah, but it should be a doozy. There's always some pretty good performances and some really good acceptance speeches. My personal favourite is Bob Dylan, absolutely slaying Mike Love. It's on YouTube. It's just a gorgeous, gorgeous moment in history. Go see that if you can.
I'm looking forward to seeing Cheap Trick because Rick Nielsen, he's a real showman.
Oh, he is.
He brings out like 20 guitars with him on stage.
And he's got like double necks and he wears his bow tie. He's a man.
And he has like 50 picks
that
he'll just throw out into the audience. He's awesome.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to seeing NWA. That should be pretty good.
Yes, that would be good.
So that's 2015. It's been a great year for music and lots happening. So what's going to happen in 2016? We've got our crystal ball. We're going to
Kanye.
gaze into it. So I thought we'd start off with new music. What's going to happen in 2016? Obviously, the most important record that's going to be released in 2016 is Yoko Ono. She's got a new album coming out, and it's called Yes, I Am a Witch Too.
Really?
What a convenient title that is.
What happened to Yes, I'm Really a Witch 1?
Is that already been released?
I don't know.
Well, this is what her new album's going to be called. Yes, I Am a Witch Too. I'm not sure who she's speaking to there. Of course, that'll be the most important album released this year with her caterwauling and screeching and whatever she does. Definitely looking forward to that one. Other than that, there's Mr. Bowie has got an album coming out in just under a week or 2 weeks.
January 8th, yeah.
This is just the most exciting thing. Already we've had two wonderful songs, Black Star, just an alt jazz masterpiece with a wacky ass video, which I love, and also Lazarus, which is kind of a more smoother jazz, New York jazz kind of thing, which is also pretty good. What do you think so far?
I think he's going down that road of kraut sort of prog from the
kraut prog alt jazz.
I can't even throw a label on this. It's so different. But obviously he's being a lot more experimental than I think he has been.
I have to say his voice sounds amazing still for a 67, 68 year old.
He can still hit those like glam notes.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah, and it's just he's got in places I thought in the two tracks he's got kind of a sort of swinger Frank Sinatra kind of thing going on in places.
I love that middle section in Black Star.
Yeah.
Where he really
That's definitely sort of classic glam Bowie right there.
Yeah.
Kind of hunky-dory, Ziggy Stardust. And I'm loving the jazz arrangements. They're very sophisticated, the saxophones and that sort of thing. I'm really impressed so far. I can't wait for that album to see what the other tracks are going to sound like.
What do you make of that music video for Black Star?
I love it. I just think it's the most amazing thing. If you haven't seen it, just watch it. He plays a blind man and there's weird dances and there's like a little space scene in the middle. It's pretty wacky, but I don't expect anything less from this man. He just continues to transcend what there is to transcend musically.
He tends to have a knack for the sort of surreal, abstract storytelling.
Yep.
I think I'm thinking back to the Ashes to Ashes video as well.
Mm-hmm.
And this one kind of seems to reference the Major Tom storyline a little bit. You've got that astronaut. So is this like part 3? Or is this something else?
I just don't even begin to think about those sorts of things, really.
And what's going on with him holding up the Bible and all the occult stuff going on?
If you haven't looked closely enough, on the Ziggy Stardust album cover, that Kanye appears in the sign, on the street sign.
K West.
K West. Now, what does that mean?
Well, when did that album come out? 72?
72.
First track on Ziggy Stardust is 5 years. Who's born in 1977? Kanye West.
There you go. Just reading between the lines here.
Speaking of Kanye,
he's got an album coming out, doesn't he?
Supposedly. We don't know when this is happening.
When was the last record he released?
Jesus.
That was 2013.
2013, yeah.
So he releases albums pretty quickly.
Yeah, but I don't see him following the same promotion as he did last time. Because Jesus was very sort of... he was building up to it. You could tell it was going to be released. He was doing all that weird... projecting his image, his face on the buildings across the world. This time, there hasn't really been much. He's been quite quiet. And we've heard people saying it's going to be good, it's going to be fire. Pusha T saying it's going to be really great. But I think he's just going to drop it. randomly. I don't see
He's
him
going to
having
do
a
a
good promotion.
do a
for it or anything.
Beyonce or someone.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But we all know it's coming. We didn't know about the
Yeah.
Beyonce album.
No, we didn't. Or the Bowie the next day.
No.
I'm also looking forward to there's supposedly a Gorillaz album coming out.
Yes.
So I'm looking forward to that because Damon Albarn's constantly busy. He's working on crazy operas and what he does. He had a successful solo album, which is really good, and then the Blur album's been fantastic. So it'll be interesting to see because the last Gorillaz album was 5 years ago. To see what sort of trend they go down this time. I've heard a rumor that David Bowie might be making an appearance.
That'd be crazy.
That would be crazy. And it's always interesting to see what sort of people he gets on these Gorillaz albums because he's had some pretty spectacular people play on the first 3 albums: Mos Def, Snoop Dogg, Lou Reed,
De La Soul.
who
will probably make an appearance.
Little Dragon.
They've been active lately and they're releasing an album as well.
Well, it wouldn't be a
next year.
Gorillaz album without De La Soul.
No.
No.
Have they? They've been on Demon Days and Plastic Beach. They went on the first album. Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that. Also, there's highly likely that a Radiohead album will be coming out. Just last week they released their version of the Spectre title track.
Which I really liked that. Yeah, I think it would have suited the movie a lot better.
Okay.
The version they used in the movie from Sam Smith was just very kind of generic, kind of staple Bond.
Well,
song.
that's usually what they go with.
Yeah, it's like an imitation Shirley Bassey sort of thing.
Right. It'll be interesting to see because they're not really productive these days. Radiohead. They've only released 3 albums in 15 years. I didn't really warm to their last album. I loved In Rainbows, so it'll be interesting to see what track they go down this time. Whether they return to kind of a more sort of computer bends kind of thing, or continue with what they've done since Kid A. Personally, I hope they go back to the sort of pre-Kid A days because I'm kind of 50-50 on their...
Have they been going down this electronic path
for
quite a while?
Since Kid A came out, and sometimes I just think Tom York's just going on some crazy... I don't know. So, yeah, that's what we know is coming out next year at the moment. Obviously, new albums will be announced further down the line.
Yeah.
Anything else that might
I'm
be coming
looking
up?
forward to hearing Anderson .Paak's,
Yep.
which is coming out, I think, in January or February. Really promising young guy. Has a really cool kind of gravelly voice. Lots of really interesting funk, G-funk things going on. He dropped that single, Am I Wrong, with Schoolboy Q. He released another single. He's been in a project with NX Worries, who's a DJ that came out on Stone's Throw. Really interesting, kind of atmospheric, deep, murky beats, and then he kind of cuts through it with this really cool, gravelly voice. I'm excited to hear what he does on this full-length album, and he's also been signed by Dr. Dre. So if he's handling the sounds, it's going to be good. And Missy Elliott will probably release something if she's made the single with Pharrell. So if she's going to make an album that sounds anything like the best of what she was doing in that late 90s to early 2000s period, yeah, it should be good. Oh, Pusha T. Okay, so this is another one of my favorite albums from this year. And the great thing about this album was it was just a prelude. So he's made this really short album, 30 minutes long, and it's just incredibly great. Really clever lyrics. The production, I feel like, because Pusha T is now the president of Good Music, which is Kanye's label and collective. So he's tied into that whole Kanye thing. The album sounds like a best of Kanye era. It's like college dropout, late registration, graduation era kind of production. A little bit of dark twisted fantasy in there as well. And this is just a prelude. So the big thing is going to be coming out early next year. So that's going to be something that I'm going to be looking forward to a lot.
Alrighty. I thought also just another thing that kind of popped into my head of sort of trends that'll happen next year. Obviously, I think the streaming issue will continue to be a big deal. It'll be interesting to see whether Adele finally puts her music on Spotify and Apple Music and whether other artists follow. So that'll be interesting. And whether these sort of copyright lawsuits that are on Spotify, whether they lead to anything. Because I think another problem or issue has been the freemium model versus the subscription model. And I think a lot of artists disagree that people can just listen to unlimited music for free with the advertising, while people also can pay a $12 monthly subscription or whatever. I think that's also one of the sticking points for a lot of these artists as well. So it just comes again back to this issue of free music versus paid for music, basically.
So it all comes down to, I think, will these companies actually be forced to change their revenue percentages?
Models, yep.
Yeah. And is there really any pressure on them to do that?
No.
No. So
I think major record labels have been quite happy to put music on these platforms. There's so much music on there, and the major labels to me just seemed quite ho-hum about the whole deal to me, which is surprising considering they went for years going after music downloaders and P2P file sharing.
I think we're seeing file sharing is just starting to just wane a bit. We're starting to
question.
see some of the major uploaders are starting to be prosecuted. I think the Pirate Bay founder said that he's starting to give up. So that could start to decline next year and the following years.
Another thing that kind of just sort of is quite interesting, holograms. Do you think 2016 is the year that holograms finally take off and we see Tupac tours? Because there was a story I heard several weeks ago that Jackie Wilson hologram is going on a tour. Is 2016 the year of the hologram?
Please no. Please God no.
Because something I've been thinking about a lot recently is as older artists pass, we're going to get more and more imitators, I reckon. Like what happened with classical music is the music lived on through orchestras playing sort of concertos and symphonies and whatever, or Beethoven.
Right.
Are we going to see that sort of thing happen with popular music as more and more acts die? What do you think?
Well, we have already been seeing for a long time, bands will do tributes to their favourite, they'll do like cover songs of their favourite artists. But yeah, this is quite new. This is like a tribute show, but it's artificial.
It's real, but it's not real.
It's very staged.
And will it just be the hologram by itself, or will there actually have live other musicians complementing the hologram? Will you see the surviving members of a band playing with their dead lead singer, or the?
And that just opens a whole can of worms because there's this free reign. You can do whatever you want. You can have Tupac and Biggie on the stage, and you could do whatever you want. That could
be something else,
you could
really.
Do whatever you wanted with them.
Well, there's that the hologram thing, and then there's also like sort of tribute acts, like people dressing up as so and so and playing the songs. Is that going to be more common as people sort of die or retire?
Yeah, I think that'll always be.
I mean, that's already been going around for years,
yeah.
but is that going to be more common, I think? Or are we going to have like sort of extravaganzas where we'll see like a 15-piece band covering Pink Floyd songs?
I think that a lot of these tribute acts are they're actually quite professional.
They are very professional, and they pretty much sell out wherever they go.
They dedicate themselves to replicating.
Absolutely, to the nth
everything.
degree.
Yeah, I've seen a Pink Floyd tribute band before.
Is that the Pink Floyd Experience?
Yes.
Yeah,
and they're amazing.
They are.
They're
I've
amazing.
heard pretty good things about them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they did a live stage show, and it was I think it was Dark Side of the Moon. Yeah, it was awesome.
But in line with that, I can tell you we do not need any more Elvis impersonators. Please, people. No more.
Not a fan?
There's like 50,000 of these people, and they're all wearing. They're focusing on the side of Elvis's career where he was in decline, and he was wearing those horrible tracksuits thingies and the glasses. No. Just no.
Do you think we'll ever see that again with any of the modern artists? People will imitate them to that extent?
Well, we already do, don't we? I'm sure there's like Kurt Cobain.
But not like
copycats?
On that scale.
Oh, not on that scale. No, Elvis is they've just gone overboard. He's just, I mean, I guess the only person I can think that can come close to that kind of degree of imitation is probably Michael Jackson.
Right.
Yeah. Or Freddie Mercury. They're the only probably two.
Yeah.
But other than that, no. And I just hope not. Well, that concludes our first podcast in this new series that we're bringing to Nowhere Bros in 2016. Just a review of 2015, what a great year it's been for music, and a not too serious look at 2016, because you can't really predict what's going to happen. I mean, we know a little bit, but, it'll happen when it happens. We're going to hopefully make this a monthly thing and bring you a sort of themed kind of podcast where we talk about different genres or periods in music or any albums that have been released or any issues, like the streaming issue. If anything happens there, we'll discuss it, and yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed it, and hopefully we haven't rambled on for too long, and thank you for listening.
Thanks.
We'll see you next time.